Raksha Mantri Rajnath Singh's cryptic message, what the country wants will happen, is being analyzed very extensively on either side of the border. India has unleashed a slew of measures, from holding the Indus Waters Treaty in abeyance to seeking a check on funds for Pakistan to blocking cross-border trade and of course even contact. But will there be a kinetic strike, kinetic action to send across a clear message to Pakistan's military-jihad complex? Is that the only language Pakistan understands? Joining me on India First is Ambassador Ajay Bisaria, former Indian High Commissioner to Pakistan. Ambassador Bisaria has a distinguished career of over 35 years and as a diplomat was India's envoy to Pakistan at the time of the Pulwama and Balakot airstrikes. Ambassador, welcome on India Today.
Thank you, Gaurav. Good to be here.
Ambassador, from seeking to starve Pakistan of funds to holding the Indus Waters Treaty in abeyance, India has taken a series of non-kinetic measures. You understand Pakistan. You understand the Pakistani military mindset much better than most. Do non-kinetic actions matter to the Pakistani military jihad complex, or kinetic action must follow?
You know, I would make the argument that kinetic operations or kinetic measures are essential. They are a necessary, perhaps not sufficient condition. The non-kinetic measures that India has taken so far are perhaps the most serious non-kinetic measures India has taken against terrorism compared to any other terrorism episode in the past. And particularly the Indus Waters Treaty is a huge step that India has taken. It's already affecting Pakistan. Pakistan has called it an act of war. But in my view, if the objective is to set up deterrence for the next Pahalgam not to happen, it is important to have a kinetic action in the mix to make sure that that deterrence is credible, that deterrence is lasting, and that deterrence specifically targets the Pakistan army.
The last time that kinetic action was taken, you were India's High Commissioner to Pakistan. Now, beyond public posturing, what was the impact of Balakot on the Pakistani military mindset? In your book, Anger Management, you've mentioned that 9 missiles were aimed at Pakistan had Wing Commander Abhinandan not been returned immediately. Did coercion work effectively that time? Is that the only language Pakistan understands? And now, 5 years after Balakot, will that coercion have to be scaled up to send across that message?
Yes, Gaurav, so a couple of questions here. One, in Balakot, India was dominating that escalation ladder. After the first escalation by Pakistan in Pulwama, India's response got Pakistan by surprise. The Balakot action was like nothing that has been done before. Since 1971, there had been no Indian fighter aircraft that had crossed the international border, and they did this time. So it was a significant step. Pakistan took counter steps the next day. An Indian pilot was down, and then India said that we will escalate unless the pilot is returned. At that point, Pakistan decided that they wanted to de-escalate and they wanted to get out of that situation. The threat of force, the threat of escalatory steps from India was credible, and the situation completely de-escalated at that point. So I think Pakistan, it entered Pakistan's calculus that India would take very firm and very resolute measures in case of any terrorism. And that is why, in my view, this deterrence is held for 6 years. That is why you haven't had a major attack of terrorism for all these years. But suddenly the internal dynamic in Pakistan changed. And despite this high cost that the Pakistan army would have to pay its army chief decided that he needed to do this, perhaps because a skirmish with India suited him, and to bolster his own position within the army and within Pakistan, which he thought deeply threatened by the deep unpopularity that he has and the army has. So I think there was a different dynamic at play there. But the short point is that Balakot did establish a strong deterrence against terrorism, and it's time to reimpose that. Now, whether that comes with kinetic action or non-kinetic measures or a blend of both, the government of India at this point would be deliberating and would know best.
Okay. You read the Pakistani mind quite well. You were there at the time of Pulwama and Balakot. How do you see the reactions that are coming from Pakistan? For example, the information minister goes live at 2 in the morning and he fears that the next attack could take place in 24 to 36 hours. That hasn't happened. Pakistan is reaching out to global capitals, many say, seeking intervention. But at the same time, while it wants to de-escalate, or that's the buzz that we hear, it's also testing missiles. POJK residents are being told to stock up on food. A special session of Pakistan's National Assembly is being called. What does this indicate? Does this indicate panic in Pakistan, or are they also planning for resolute action or response when that resolute action is taken, sir?
So I think it reflects certainly a high degree of panic. It also reflects a certain conscious attempt at messaging through saber rattling and trying to demonstrate to its own internal audiences that Pakistan is prepared, or Pakistan is prepared to take that action. But I think it also reflects at another level the position of the civilians compared to the army. Because typically in Pakistan, all through its history, the army takes a bunch of measures keeping the civilians in the dark whenever, even if there's a hybrid regime with the civilians in the mix. And the civilians are then left to defend it and to come up with the best defense possible. They come up with implausible deniability. They come up with some ridiculous theories like saying it's all a false flag operation. So I think the civilians tend to be floundering in this kind of situation. The messaging is not very clear, and also they are frequently losing their nerve because this constant threat of action that they feel is also something that gets a country on edge.
The current Pakistan Army Chief Asim Munir, he was DGISI at the time of Pulwama. Given his mindset, and many think or say he's a radical Islamist, in your appreciation, is he more willing to go up that escalation ladder, that so-called Ghazi mindset or the Ghazwa-i-Hind mindset that we hear of? And in your appreciation, are we on top of that escalation ladder, even if it means climbing up several notches in the whole of Government of India approach, sir?
Absolutely. So, he is, I would say Asim Munir is an opportunistic radical. He wasn't quite a radical when he was DGISI. He was serving under Bajwa. Bajwa was not a radical person, and Bajwa, in fact, was looking at a Bajwa doctrine, which was about a pivot to geoeconomics away from geopolitics, which was somewhat progressive and pragmatic approach. Now, here, Asim Munir, and if you call this the Munir doctrine is a mix of the Zia doctrine and the Jinnah doctrine. He's trying to regress into Pakistan's past with a complete lack of imagination and trying to define a new sort of defending the army as defending the ideological frontiers of Pakistan because he's beleaguered and he feels this positioning as a sort of general who's flirting with the right wing and is taking on ideological postures will strengthen his position. But more than that, he probably calculated that a little skirmish with India is what will help him retrieve his reputation, which is mud within the army, and which is also very, very poor within the general populace, because the general populace felt that they wanted Imran Khan, they elected Imran Khan, but the army under Asim Munir changed that result and got in the Sharif brothers. And he is probably trying to deal with this situation by doing all that he's doing. I don't think he's an ideological convert
Okay.
from the beginning, but it's a convenient posture to have.
But you know what you say is very significant. It's also very dangerous. If he's a very dangerous cocktail of a Zia doctrine and a Jinnah doctrine, and if he mixed the two, which means he would end up being some kind of a radical Islamist, talking about that Islamic bomb, and he's already talked about this two-nation theory, Hindus being different, Muslims being different. Are we now to see more terrorism in our country? Will he want to scale up? That, he probably thought there'll be a quick response from India and he was prepared for it. There hasn't been a quick response from India. Is he bleeding because the response hasn't been swift? Is he sweating it out, and does that tire him out in your appreciation? So another terror attack forcing India's hand, sir?
Well, it's we can speculate on this, and there are multiple scenarios possible. But I think if we look at it as analysts, I would say that this is an army chief with a higher appetite for risk for having even attempted Pahalgam, and but he heads an institution which does not have such an high appetite for risk, because the institution understands that they are no match in the conventional realm for India's army, which is 10x more superior, for India's national will, India's comprehensive national power, which is 10x more than Pakistan. So they recognize that itself acted in the past as a deterrent, but the personal risk appetite has possibly gone up because he feels that this move could help him personally. But I would say that it is an escalated and tense situation, and perhaps the absence of any immediate move from India keeps the Pakistan army as well as the civilians in a higher state of panic, because they are unable to read exactly what India is going to do and when.
Very interesting, because you also understand the state of affairs in Pakistan better than many. Their financial situation, the state of their armed forces. A statement or a conversation between two Pakistani journalists had gone viral some years ago, where they had a meeting. This group of journalists had a meeting with General Qamar Javed Bajwa, and General Bajwa, then army chief, had indicated that Pakistan's armor, their military might, was in a very poor shape. They didn't even have enough diesel for movement, or words to that effect. A recent intelligence assessment has also indicated that Pakistan has ammunition for less than 4 days of a full-fledged conflict. Ambassador Visaria, your appreciation, you heard that conversation then. You know the Pakistan Army's situation much better than most. Your assessment, sir.
Yes, and I know both these journalists, Naseem Zehra and Hamid Mir, and they were part of that larger group. And it's fascinating. As people who watch Pakistan, who study Pakistan, this was a very revealing conversation. And Bajwa, after he retired, General Bajwa was particularly voluble and particularly sharing a large number of things which were clear. But this comes as no great revelation of a secret for the Indian Army, for instance, because what it is essentially underlining is that there is the conventional war fighting capacity of Pakistan's forces is limited, and there is a great deal of asymmetry in that realm with India. And, any military expert, you talk to a lot of them, will tell you that, and that the Pakistan army, beyond a point, doesn't have the stomach nor the capacity to have a war with India, which is in the conventional realm. And I underline that because, right after 1971, Pakistan seemed to come to the conclusion that it is in the non-conventional asymmetric means that it ought to develop the capacities. So it went on to acquire it became important to acquire nuclear weapons, to get parity in the nuclear realm, and to develop proxy warfare as a legitimate strategy to be able to contest with India in the sub-conventional realm. So I think what this really is underlining is that the Pakistan army is well aware of its limitations in dealing with a much more powerful Indian army.
And yet, General Asim Munir did what he did, and now he's brought in another general as his national security advisor. General Asim Malik, DGI, ISI, has been brought in as NSA. Is the civilian leadership, anyways, which was powerless, have they been completely sidelined? What's the message here? Does he want somebody who's his person to be able to deal with other NSAs across the world? How would you see this?
So I would see this as at two levels. One, certainly, even the illusion of an NSA who is reporting to the civilian leadership is gone, because this is clearly somebody trusted by the Pakistan Army chief who has been made the NSA. And in a sense, it's not a bad thing, because what it means is that if this NSA becomes a channel of communication with other NSAs, he will have the ear of Asim Munir. Because, in the past, there have been NSAs who developed into a power center of their own, and one was not very sure how much they were reporting or getting instructions for or delivering the messages of the current army chief, or playing games of their own. So I think what it means is that he is removing all pretenses of any civilian facade here, saying the India relationship and in fact all foreign and security policy is with the Pakistan army. He is in charge of it, and he has his man who becomes a global interlocutor, possibly even with India in a later crisis management or crisis communication situation. And he is basically not trusting the civilians to have any of their people doing any of the talking.
So, but there will be a kinetic response. I mean, if their NSA reaches out to ours, to our NSA, and they have a meeting, elsewhere, either in Asia or elsewhere, is that a likelihood? Or again, we are speculating, because many in India are saying, yes, we've taken a lot of non-kinetic measures, and I want to specifically come to Indus Waters Treaty in just a moment, but I want to understand, a kinetic response will and must follow for that credible deterrence. But if Pakistan responds to that, will we be happy with that situation? Fine, we sent across a message, they will be happy, they were able to do a swift retort of sorts, or will we then escalate it further this time, sir?
Gaurav, if you see the sequence of events that took place and the pattern of Indian responses, India's response has been different every time. And right from 2000, you recall 2001, after the parliament attack, we had Operation Parakram. After 2008, we had more diplomacy, arguably not effective enough. And 2016 and 19, we had kinetic action, which set up a paradigm of hot pursuit and set up a paradigm of setting up deterrence through kinetic action. Now, what happens this time? Let's not speculate. Our forces know best what to do. But whether we have kinetic action in the mix or the very powerful move of the Indus Waters Treaty becomes the deterrence. All that will play out over the next few months, and this kinetic action can happen at a place and manner of our choosing, but also a time of our choosing, which means it could happen in the Manekshaw model 9 months after Mrs. Gandhi said, "Can we do something in 1971?" It took 9 months to do it. Or it could it could happen today before dinner, it could happen a week from now, or it could happen in a few months. But there is a certain value in keeping your adversary guessing of
Oh,
when, where,
absolutely.
and how your action will come.
Oh, absolutely, sir. And the action that follows in terms of the Indus Waters Treaty. We've been hearing a series of statements from Khwaja Asif, the defense minister, for example. If he says, he says that if a structure is built, it will be destroyed, and holding the water is an act of war. Are Pakistanis flapping already?
I would say it is a measure of panic. It's a lot of bluster. And again, this is part of a classic Pakistan response of a lot of saber rattling very early in a conflict situation, because this is something that they feel gets global attention. So I think this is, there are the measures taken so far are very minor. There is what India can do at this point is control the flows. Is what India can do is withhold the data, but in the what is very serious from Pakistan's point of view is what India can do in the medium term, and there India now has a strong lever to put pressure on Pakistan to change its behavior, because this move itself sets up a certain deterrence. Because what it also says right now is that India has said that we've kept the treaty in abeyance, but there could, if Pakistan changes its behavior, theoretically, there could be a conversation, and there could be a calibration of how
Okay.
much that treaty is used for controlling the flow of water.
Okay. And, how do we want Pakistan to change, and can a leopard change its spots? But, the point that many in India have argued that we must strengthen democratic parties and forces in Pakistan. But when leaders like former Foreign Minister Bilawal Bhutto Zardari speak the language of Hafiz Muhammad Saeed, the UN designated global terrorist, that if water doesn't flow in the Indus, blood will, or words to that effect. So his grandfather followed the Pakistan army agenda. He was hanged. His mother followed the Pakistan army agenda. She was shot dead by Pakistan-backed terror. His two mamoos died under very mysterious circumstances. And yet, is he now going down the same path of Hafiz Muhammad Saeed and the Pakistan army?
Well, I would read this as Bilawal Bhutto saying to the army chief, "Sir, please remember, I'm still around, I'm still relevant." And there was a theory, when this new government was formed, that the deal was that they would have the Sharif brothers for 2.5 years, and the rest of the period they would give to the Bhuttos or the Bhutto Zardaris. So perhaps he's trying to re-establish his relevance by giving statements which he thinks the army would like to hear, and trying to be, holier than the Pope in trying to ingratiate himself to the army. So I think this is really an internal play, an internal positioning by Bilawal Bhutto in trying to say that he still matters.
Okay. So India's trying to rally global opinion against Pakistani military jihad complex. You heard the Russian president, he made a statement today. You've heard what global reaction has been. India is also trying to reach out to ADB and IMF. Is all of that working, or these are efforts from our side, some working, some may take more time to work?
I can tell you from my experience of global diplomacy during the time of Pulwama, it made a lot of difference. A lot of it you won't hear of because diplomacy, like an iceberg, is conducted behind closed doors. So you see only the tip of the iceberg, which is the public diplomacy. But a lot of conversations do take place, and there is very little traction for the internal and absurd narrative that Pakistan tries to peddle in its echo chambers. Globally, there are no takers for that narrative. You heard how shocked and surprised and scoffing the global media was of the Pakistan ministers when they go and talk about false flag operations. So the global community understands that there is Pakistan is a source, an epicenter of terrorism, and there will be serious moves and serious conversation by Indian diplomats and multiple others, particularly along with the Americans, on sanctioning some of these military officials, on the IMF loan, on having FATF, Financial Action Task Force like conditions inserted into the IMF program, because at the end of the day, if when Pakistan is involved in this kind of terrorism, it is diverting funds that the global community is giving in good faith for the Pakistan people. The army is diverting these funds for acts of terrorism, and that should shock and surprise the global community. And certainly, these are the conversations our diplomats, I'm sure, are having as we speak.
So is the best way to teach Pakistani military jihad complex a lesson sanctions against Pakistani generals, be it Asim Munir or that entire military jihad network and perhaps their families? Is that the only way Pakistan, there will be costs imposed on Pakistan, or kinetic action also essential simultaneously?
I would say there is a whole menu of options, and it includes sanctions, it includes economic sanctions against terrorists and their backers, which include the army. It includes, the economic coercion methods. It includes diplomatic measures. All of this is and should be on the table, along with possible kinetic responses directed at the terrorists. You would recall in the past, Pakistan used to have a narrative of non-state actors. It would say, yes, they've come from our land, but these are non-state actors. Now they've changed that narrative to false flag operations. So, all those narratives are unconvincing, have very little traction globally, and these other measures therefore become more important. It does become important to have these conversations, and India needs to have them with global partners, and
Okay.
some of them, as in when there is very clear evidence of what these individuals are up to, they will start sticking.
There are many, many more questions, and I hope I can get you back on the show very soon as this campaign against Pakistan state-sponsored radical Islamist terror continues. Ambassador Ajay Bisaria for joining me here on India Today. Many thanks.